Good morning. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. I really appreciate that, as well as the rest of my team. I'm Ava Jacob, this is Mike Chandler, and this is Jeremy Koufakis. So to give you a little background, since there are no survey questions asking the location of the sales consultants, we used the IP addresses included in the survey data to get a general sense of where everybody was. There seems to be a balance of amounts of dealerships across the nation. This is significant because this represents a fair representation of all the dealerships across the nation.
All right, in terms, what we have here is cross-tab of the age and iPad use of these sales consultants that took the survey. And one thing we found pretty surprising was that for the age group 22 to 30, we found that a majority of them either don't use the iPad or use it 25% or less of the time. And besides that, it's pretty consistent, the percentages overall. So we found that age is not a determining factor with the use of the iPad between people.
All right, so next we wanted to look at the sales impact of the iPad for obvious reasons. So what we did was we used the the data given to us by Mazda. So we saw that when a dealership went from the red to the green status, the average cars sold per month increased by 3.26, and then likewise with the numbers to the right. But what we realized is that we can't really figure out if that status change is actually increasing sales if we don't know what the average growth was for dealerships over those 9 months. So what we did was we calculated the average growth from October 2011 to August 2012 and found that on average a dealership sold 1.48 cars more per month than they were in October 2011. So then we could compare this to those specific dealerships that made that growth, and we found that the dealerships that went from the red to green status between October and August were selling 3.26 more cars per month as opposed to the average of 1.48. So that shows they're selling 121%, their growth was 121% higher than average. And then what that also shows us is that red to yellow only grew by 10% and yellow to green went down 3%. And we think that these are kind of, this shows that, well, dramatic change in iPad usage does increase sales. Making moderate changes from red to yellow or yellow to green isn't as drastic and is very similar to the average. Next, we wanted to compute the same thing with customer satisfaction. So we looked at the Treat Me Right index and the overall sales satisfaction, and here we saw dramatic growth compared to the average. I don't even think it needs to be said, the average was less than a 1% growth, and for Treat Me Right, well, the rest all increased at least 1%, even as high as 2.44. And for overall sales satisfaction, it was even more dramatic. It was originally less than 1%, it was 0.05% on average. And for those that improved their iPad usage, the customer satisfaction went up dramatically.
All right, during the survey there was a question asked to the sales consultants about potential features that they most desired, and they would rate it on a scale of 1 to 5. And based on those results, inventory and the email and print feature were the two most desired apps features. It's also important to note that the review, pricing, and search features still at an average of over 4 out of 5. So those are also desired a lot. And one other thing worth noting about this is that the note-taking feature finished third to last. And we thought this was pretty important because it's been talked a lot in the past, so the fact that not a lot of people don't desire it as much as others, we thought was pretty important. Some of our first couple of recommendations, the first one is adding an inventory feature, and we brought up this idea in some of our past couple ones, so we were really happy when we looked at the results and we found that it was the most desired feature. And the way we would have it designed is that we wanted to make it accessible on the internet, the iPad, and on people's mobile devices. So in terms of the iPad, there would be its own section of the app, except it would definitely have to have a password to be entered. So when you give the iPad to the customer, they can't just get in to that section to access it. In terms of the having on mobile devices, you need to be logged on to access it, but then once you log on, you don't need to keep on logging in like you do with the iPad. So the salesman, they can quickly take out their phone, look up what inventory they have, where it's located, and they can take it with them to the car, and they won't have to take the iPad away from the customer. Also, in terms of having it available on the internet, just so everyone who's by computer can quickly look up it, and also it would make it easier to update the inventory, because you would have to sync this data with the software that you have that keeps track of all that. So that's in terms of the inventory. Our next recommendation was about the internet, because on the survey, they said that the feature that they were most dissatisfied with the iPad was the internet speed, and we saw in the About section of the iPad app that it's recommended that you have a 3 megabit per second internet connection, and I think most people, while there are definitely a lot of people that know what that means, I think there's some people that don't understand what that means. So if there's a way to track the internet speed of the users, like you do with the other data, that would be a good idea. Or you can implement a speed test in the app itself. So whenever time someone runs it, you can see their speed, and it will get sent to the server, so you guys have that information. And if you see that they're below that 3 megabyte per second connection, you can send an email to them with recommendations on how to improve their internet speed, like getting more routers to expand the wireless range, possibly enabling the LTE on the iPad if it has LTE, or finding a new wireless service provider for the internet. And our other recommendation for this part is sticking with the pen and paper for the needs discovery form. I have like styluses here and iPad, so we tested out the feature of like writing on the app, and for the most part it's not that practical. There's a lot of the problem with the iPad is that the way the touchscreen is designed, since it's not since it's all glass, that means that when you write on the iPad, you can't have your palm or hand touch the iPad, which can get very annoying, because when you're always writing, you're touching. So you would have to get used to that. Also, it's not extremely fine point writing, so we tried putting the form in there and like writing on it, and it didn't seem like it was very practical. And if you really wanted to get it right, you kind of lost, like you kind of had to focus on it, and you would lose like your relationship with the customer. So we think staying with that would be a better idea, and we could show it to you later if you would like.
All right, so next we wanted to look at the app and any potential added features. So we noticed that the internet speed was an issue, and overall just the speed of navigation in the app. So the first thing that we thought about adding was a needs discovery refined search for the search Mazda feature. This would make it a more interactive needs discovery process. It's kind of like after needs discovery, you can go through and be like, all right, so we wanted a black car. So then you press exterior color, choose black, and it just narrows it down to the cars with black, though I assume they all are. And you can do that with price, body type, transmission. I know only certain cars come in manual for Mazda. Next, we want to add a search bar. And how the search bar would work, it would be autofill. So anywhere on the app you can access this search feature. You click it, a keyboard shows up. Say you type in C, you'll automatically see 2013 CX5, 2012 CX7, like a menu right here, and you can click one. It would also feature at the bottom of those results a search Google for whatever you entered, and that way one of the features that the dealers asked for would be reviews, third-party reviews, such as consumer reports. So by having that quick access to Google search, you could quickly get to a consumer review for one of the cars that the customer is interested in. And then finally is the send and print feature. And this would enable you to email the whatever page you're looking at or print it. And we've decided that the email should come from the dealer's email address, so that say you're with a customer and they see a comparison they like, they say, can you email that to me? You quickly press that button, an email option, and then type in their email. And that way when they get home, they've got it in their inbox from the dealer's email, and then they can respond to it and initiate the conversation. Also, the print we think would be important, so that if you're showing that comparison, for instance, when we were at one of our Mazda dealerships, they're out of brochures for 2012 cars, so we had to take home a 2011 brochure, and we think that being able to print this quickly from an app would allow them to have updated information immediately. And then finally, we've noticed that there are some bugs within the app. Sometimes when you try to scroll up like this, it gets locked. And we also noticed some comments throughout the survey that mentioned some other bugs. And now I want to pass it over to Ava to discuss the certification.
Lastly, we recommend an online training webinar to show the importance and value of the app for sales consultants. After viewing it, each sales consultant will be required to pass an assessment that requires them to perform certain tasks during the app, using the app on a computer. One iPad will be sent to every Mazda dealership with a 75% pass rate. This incentive gets iPads to the most committed and knowledgeable sales consultants. It also improves the awareness of the application. Afterwards, the dealerships can buy additional iPads if necessary. These are our recommendations that we believe are essential to the success of the app. And while they seem pretty simple, they are necessary functions to implement first before moving on and focusing on implementing more advanced features in the future. And now we'll open up to questions.
Jeremy. Go ahead, folks. The floor is yours.
Just a quick comment for me. Very astute on the tracking from the red to yellow to green and using our metrics. That's actually something that I guess we kind of take for granted because we put that tracking together, and we know where we're moving overall. But taking it from an outsider's perspective, I can certainly see how you guys got there, and I'm impressed with your ability to kind of decode what we put together there, because it's a little bit of a strange concept and how we did that analysis and did that tracking. So nice effort in figuring that out and understanding what we were trying to achieve there. That was great. A question for you on your recommendation with the send and print. So were you thinking that we would just send and print screen grabs, or would you send and print specific assets within? How did you envision that send and print to be executed?
I think pretty much it would pretty much be like screenshots. I mean, the iPad's showing all the information, so that's pretty much what you're going to want to be printing out. And it would make sense that if it's displayed in the best way that's viewed here, it's probably it probably would display fine on paper.
Okay, very good. And very interesting to see those survey results coming back for the first time. This is the first time we've actually surveyed our sales consultants, so it's interesting to see what they're saying. I like all your recommendations. I think they really make a lot of sense. Actually, Jim DiMarzio and I have been having quite a few conversations about the next step in enhancements, and a lot of these things are exactly the items that we've been talking about. It's great to hear you guys be able to corroborate that and to have that survey also come back and corroborate some of those concepts. I like the idea of an iPad certification. I think we need to play with that. When we went out with the with the app concept to begin with, I think our intention was that we wanted the dealers to invest in it themselves because there is a little bit, we tend to see better engagement with skin in the game. But I think that as we've been going along, we've certainly been seeing other issues in terms of security and theft and item, if they're controlled by the store, maybe walking away. So putting them in the hands of the people to own, sales consultants to own themselves, may be something that we look at going forward, and something that Joe and I have talked about as well. So those are my comments, but great job. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Guys, you have any?
Yeah, actually, I do, guys. Again, great job, great recommendations. The age not being a factor in iPad usage, very interesting. Were you able to glean any reasons why some people maybe weren't as engaged as others? Were you able to come up with anything on that end?
Well, it wasn't just that age was a factor. I think that there were some dealerships that had no hardware at all, so they didn't get to experience the Mazda app. Also, there was, we just found it interesting that the younger generation of sales consultants didn't really incorporate the iPad usage into the sales process as much as we would have expected, because we're young. Like, if I was a salesman, I know that I would try to use an iPad in my sales process. So we just found that interesting when we cross-tagged.
Gotcha.
Actually, building on that, it's a good question, and I don't remember if in the survey did we ask what the amount of time the sales consultant had worked at the dealership? Was that one of our
I
questions?
think we asked them how long they had worked as a salesperson, I believe. I think that was one of the questions.
So the cross tab on that.
That would be interesting to see. Yeah, if we could compare the tenure at the store with the utilization, because I would guess that if you've been there a little bit longer, you might be a little bit more familiar with the various tools that we have. Being that your youngest group uses it the least, I wonder if maybe they're just the least familiar with all the tools in the store.
Well, it's almost a little bit flawed, right? Because if age is not a factor in utilization, you can't truly say that unless everybody is utilizing the process. So some dealers didn't buy any iPads, some dealers have one iPad, some dealers, they get a young salesperson in and they show them a different process and they don't even get in because they're not comfortable with it themselves. So if a manager, for instance, is not comfortable with it, he doesn't know how to train them on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's interesting because what this does is it makes you think, if we get to a utilization level of X, then we ask the questions based on high utilization users. Here's a survey for you. And there's so many ways you can break it up after.
That's why we came up with the concept of the certification program, because definitely making sure that everybody's aware that this app exists is very useful, and I'm sure young people would hop right on board with the exposure of this app and the value of it.
Dan, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. That was an awesome presentation. I thought it was very informative. Thank you.
So here's what I wrote down, just really quick. This is so you guys can get in my head on how I keep notes. What if we give what would we give salespeople to use on their phones that would help? Like, what could we give them? I think the inventory thing, the reason people ask for it is because the customer says, do you have any? And they want to look and see if they have any. Many times it doesn't matter if we have the car or not because they haven't qualified the customer yet, but they want to be able to give them a quick answer, But the connections, test the connections and send that into corporate. So you go, hey, listen, we've been monitoring your store. You guys got to juice it up.
Yep.
The speed of data sucks. Add the search bar. Send and print feature, I think, you guys touched on that, but what I can tell you about the send and print feature is this, is we've been rationalizing at dealerships, this is outside of the iPad brochures, and we've been saying, hey, let's give somebody a flash drive. Why do we have all this paper? So we've already been down this road a little bit. I think I've taken your thought process on send and print, which we've considered before, and I think what we would probably do with that is start off with the kernel of that idea and say, what is the stuff that we're going to send most to people? Would you like that? So we can take a closed out article from Consumer Reports and ship it, or we can actually send them a PDF with another button, just click, it'll automatically launch them a PDF of a full brochure. So you can say, no problem on the brochure, would you like me to send it to your computer, or do you want to really carry the one? And 50% will say, give me a real brochure, the other 50% will say, send it. But there's a lot of things we can do around send and print. We would just have to quantify what are the top 4 or 5 things people want to take away with them, or that we want to give to people to make sure they take away, and then embed those. So I thought that was fabulous. It's really, you're onto what we've been looking at. Really, and I think the key is we're only going to be as good as you are trained. We talked to a lot of dealers, and you guys spoke to a bunch of dealers, and you said you had the managers telling you, I like the finance feature, and you're going, there isn't no favorite. So it just goes to show you that if we can communicate it properly to the upper management, and then have a certification, those 2 things. And we also have a dashboard coming that's going to show, so I can check on my dealership right now, just going to see who's used it, who's been using it the most. If we incorporate your thoughts into what we've got coming, we can see a big difference. Because making an iPad app for an auto manufacturer, it's not hard to do. It's having full utilization of it. That's the secret, because technology moves faster than human behavior.
Definitely.
So those are great suggestions, guys. I thought you did a great job.
I just want to throw one thing out there, the fact that you identified a need for third-party accolades. I mean, that's my biggest obstruction that I run into. And I've developed another system that runs on the side of this thing, different icon in there, and I'd love to see the 2 systems merge somehow, either with a link from here that even just goes to the internet to grab it, but good commentary on that.
Yeah, email a link, because Dan's put together a collection of every research done on Mazda, and he's put that together just on the side. He set up his own site, has his own analytics set up, and this is a guy that just does, you talk about being a really guy who's engaged in his company. So one of the things that you bring up this screen print thing is the ability to email links that we already know that's pre-contented is probably circles around that into the brochure item. So that's another good thing that
Also,
you spur an idea.
I'm an inbound marketer, that's my focus, so I think also being able to enroll those emails into nurturing campaigns that I'm sure you guys already have would be great, so it's a new way to include new people into the system, so you can just enroll them into nurture campaigns.
Especially when the prospect level, because they haven't bought yet. When they buy, we get their email and we send them stuff. But if you want to get volumes and volumes of clients, emails, you have to get it at the prospect level. That's true. All right, excellent. Good job.